So this is the quiz, but I'm going to explain it so you guys could have it on video, so you could practice, and so you could do better on the retake. So question 1, 2. Now, a lot of us could have done this question by factoring, splitting, and solving, but I don't want you to do that. You won't get full credit if you do it any other way. It specifically says on the instructions for you to use the quadratic formula. Okay? So it doesn't matter if you have the right answer. If you didn't use the quadratic formula, you're not going to get points right there. So number 1, 2, what is the quadratic formula? There it is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4c divided by 2a. You have to have it memorized. There's no way around it. And then you got to know how to use it. How do you use it? You replace the letters with parentheses. Then, of course, you identify your a value of 1, your b value of 8, and your c value of 7. So let's plug in our b value of 8 right there and right there. Plug in our a value of 1 right there and right there. And then you plug in your c value of 7 right there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this inside value, the b squared minus 4ac, the b squared minus 4ac, that's called your discriminant value. The discriminant value is the value inside the square root, not including the square root, just the value inside the square root. And the discriminant does tell you a lot, and you need to know that stuff for question 9, as we'll get to later on. But right now, let's work on the discriminant, the b squared, 8 squared. What's 8 squared?
91.
64. Okay. And then how about 4 times 1 times 7?
Negative 28.
That's negative 28. Or you could put minus 28. It's the same deal. And I might as well do this. What is 64 minus 28? 36. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we found that the discriminant value is 36. So let me rewrite what I have. I have the negative 8. I have a plus minus. I have the square root. The discriminant is 36. It is over 2. And I could do the square root of 36. What is the square root of 36? 6. So I really have negative 8 plus or minus 6 over 2. And from there, you really have two answers. There's the plus situation and there's a minus situation. So negative 8 plus 6 divided by 2 and negative 8 minus 6 divided by 2. So this first one over here, negative 8 plus 6, that is negative 2, and it's divided by 2. Negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. And the other one, negative 8 minus 6, that's negative 14 divided by 2, and that'll give you a negative 7. So the answers, there's two answers, are negative 1 and negative 7. Are you with me?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I saw some people solve this in a different manner, and I think I gave you half credit, 1 point instead of 2 points, because I specifically said on the instructions to do it with the quadratic formula. Now, this one, like if you did it this way, this quadratic trinomial, it could be factored. So you could think what times what is 7, that if you combine together is 8. Well, that would be a positive 7 and a positive 1. And if you were to split them, x plus 7 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0. Actually, sorry, that's a plus 1 equals 0. Plus right there. And if you solve both of them, you'll get x equals negative 7 and x equals negative 1, which are the same two answers. But I cannot give you full credit if you did it this way, because that was chapter 8 when we were testing on factoring, splitting, and solving. So right here, it's all about the quadratic formula. You need the quadratic formula in order for you to get it correct, or to get full credit. Numbers 3, 4. There's the formula. There are the parentheses replacing the variables. And then let's identify the a value of 2, the b value of 9, and the c value of negative 5. So plug in the b value of 9 right there and right there, the a value of 2 right there, and the c value of negative 5 right there. Now let's work on the discriminant value. The discriminant value is 9 squared. What's 9 squared? 81. So I'm just going to do this right here on the side, 81. Now what is 4 times 2 times 5? Okay, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 5 is 40, right? And then you could go back and deal with the signs. A negative times a negative is a positive, so you would end up with a positive 40. And of course, this is still what's inside the square root. So what is 81 plus 40? 121. So the discriminant value is really 121. The discriminant value is really 121. Let me rewrite the rest. The plus or minus, the negative 9, the divided by 4. Okay, now what is the square root of 121? 11. So let's rewrite it all. It's going to be x equals negative 9 plus or minus 11 over 4. And we know that that produces two separate answers. Negative 9 plus 11 divided by 4 and negative 9 minus 11 divided by 4. Negative 9 plus 11 is 2 over 4. And 2 over 4 is 1/2. And that's one answer. Negative 9 minus 11, that would be negative 20 over 4. And negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. And that's another answer. Those are your two answers for this question. Let's move. So I'm just going to jump right into the quadratic formula here. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Of course, that's the x value. And when we identify the b value, the a value, and the c value, plugging in 12 right here, 12 right here, a value of 2 right there, and the c value of 10 over here. Again, we're going to work with the discriminant. 12 squared, that's 144. And then 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 10 is 80. And there is a minus sign, so that's minus 80. So what is 144 minus 80? 64. So let's rewrite this whole thing. Negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 64. That's our discriminant value, 64. And it is over, let me do it in red, it is over 4. So we do know that the square root of 64 is what? 8. So we have negative 12 plus or minus 8 over 4. And that's going to produce two answers. Negative 12 plus 8 over 4. And also a negative 12 minus 8 over 4. Now negative 12 plus 8, that is negative 4. And if it's over 4, that's going to be a negative 1 as our final answer. Negative 12 minus 8, that's negative 20 over 4. And that gives us negative 5 as our final answer. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so I did forget one option that we could have done right here is notice that there's a multiple of 2, multiple of 2. So this whole equation could have all been divided by 2. That way your a value would have become a 1, this would have become a 6, this would have become 5, and 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So dividing everything by 2 would have made these numbers smaller, right? And if you would have made the numbers smaller, you'd have easier numbers to work with on the quadratic formula, but nevertheless, it would still give you the same exact answers. So definitely dividing everything by 2 would make it a lot easier, but you should end up with the same exact answers. Let's move on. Again, I'm not going to write the quadratic formula. We should know it already. Let's just jump into it. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. And identifying a is 2, b is negative 5. Wait a minute, we can't identify a, b, and c yet because it's not an equation set equal to 0. If you look at the previous 3 equations, they're all quadratic trinomials that are equal to 0. We need to have this equal to 0 first. So I guess a and b are still good, but the c value is not 12. So you have to subtract 12 first, subtract 12 over here, and let's rewrite our equation. It's 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 equals 0. Now that it's equal to 0, you could identify a is 2, b is negative 5, and c is negative 12. So now we could plug in our a, b, and c values into the above quadratic formula that has parentheses instead of the variables. So it's negative b, which is negative 5, plus or minus square root of b squared, which is negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 12, all divided by 2 times a, which is 2. So let's begin with the discriminant. Negative 5 squared, that is 25. And then 4 times 2 is 8, times 12 is 96. Now we do have one negative right here and another negative there. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So that would be 25 plus 96. And when we add 25 and 96, we get 121. So what I'm going to do is rewrite my whole quadratic my whole quadratic formula. X equals positive 5, because a negative and a negative is a positive. And then inside the square root, we have 121. So let me continue with the plus minus square root of 121 over 2 times a, 2 times 2, which is 4. Probably should do that. Let me do that. So the square root of 121 is 11. So we do have 5 plus or minus 11 over 4. And you have 5 plus 11 over 4, and you also have 5 minus 11 over 4. 5 plus 11 is 16, and 16 over 4 is 4. 5 minus 11, that's negative 6. And negative 6 over 4 could only be reduced down to negative 3/2. Or you could also say negative 1.5. But those are your two answers for that quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Number 9. If the discriminant is 0, how many real solutions would you have? 1. Right? Now, what is a discriminant? In this case, it's a 121. Right? Now, what does that mean? My discriminant 121, that's a positive number. If I have a positive number like 121, how many answers do I get? I get 2 answers, as you can see right here. The 121 gave me 2 answers. Any positive number inside the square root, the discriminant, any positive number, if the discriminant is any positive number, you're going to get 2 answers. Okay? So what if I told you this? What if your discriminant value was negative? How many answers would you get? If this 121 were a negative 121, what? You get no answers, no real answers, because a negative produces imaginary values. So you don't get real answers. All right? If your discriminant is 0, well then it doesn't matter if you're adding or subtracting the square root of 0. It doesn't change anything. It's only going to give you 1 answer. It's not going to produce 2 answers. Okay? So for the retake tomorrow, I actually added 2 more questions right here, a 10 and an 11. And they're more like just sentences like this, and you need to be able to respond. So again, keep this in mind for 10 and 11 on tomorrow's retake. Right here it says if the discriminant is 0, how many real solutions do you have? You have 1 real solution, because it doesn't matter if you add or subtract 0, you still get the same answer. What if your discriminant is like negative 9? How many real solutions will you get? You get 0 solutions. They're imaginary, right? What if your discriminant is 1? If your discriminant is 1, you get 2 answers, right? Like, a lot of people get confused with the wording, but check it out. Let's just create something here. Let's say we had 2 plus or minus 1 over 2. I don't know, something like that, okay? That will produce, that discriminant of 1, the discriminant is 1 right there, that discriminant of 1 will produce 2 answers. Because the square root of 1 is 1, which would make it 2 plus or minus 1 over 2, which means that you could do 2 plus 1 over 2, and you could do 2 minus 1 over 2. So you really do get 3 over 2 as one answer, and 1/2 as the other answer. So even the discriminant of 1 will produce 2 answers, 2 real answers. Any negative discriminant produces no real answers. They're imaginary. Any discriminant of 0 will produce only 1 answer, because it doesn't matter if you add or subtract 0. You still get 1 answer only. Let's go back to here. So questions 10 and 11, we need a graph. Now this is in vertex form. Remember vertex form? Y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. And that tells you your vertex. Your vertex is the h and the k value. Okay? So all you need to do is remember to think opposite of what you see here. So that negative 4 is not h. It's actually positive 4. Okay? So the h is actually positive 4. You need to think opposite of what you see. The k value, it really is 6. You just take it for what it is. Okay? So let's go to the coordinate 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is our vertex, and of course we should draw an axis of symmetry right through it. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line going right through the x value of your vertex. And then we need more coordinates. Because the a value is -1, you could use the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. So from the vertex, go 1 over, 1 down, and put a dot there. And then go 2 over, 1, 2 over, 4 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and put a dot there. And then go back to the vertex and go 3 over, 1, 2, 3, and 9 down. So that's going to be 6, 7, 8, 9 right there. And of course, map them over to the other side. 1 unit away, this one's 2 units away, this one's 3 units away. And you should have that perfect parabola that's opening down, that's a little bit narrower than usual. Any questions? Let's move on to this question down here. State the range of the above parabola. Remember, the range, the domain are your x values. And that's super easy. That's why I didn't ask for domain. Domain is x equals all real numbers. You're going to have to know that for the final exam. The range are your y values. And remember, y is up and down. So where is this parabola at? The highest point of the parabola is at 6. And everything else is below 6, right? So what do we say the range is? We would put y less than or equal to 6. There you go. That's the range. Let's do this next one. Now this next one, you could either look at it in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, and then you could find the vertex using the vertex formula, x equals -b over 2a, or you could force this equation, you could force yourself to look at it as if it were in vertex form. Again, vertex form is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Notice that there's parentheses here, and notice that we don't see parentheses over here. But we do know that if it did have parentheses, it would be where the x is at. The x is inside the parentheses. And in there also is that h value that we think opposite of. So because there's only one x, I could put parentheses around this x. So let's do that. Let's put parentheses around this x so it'll look like vertex form. And inside the parentheses with the x is the h value. Yeah, you have to think opposite on h, but what do you see right there is the h value? Is there an h value in there with the x inside the parentheses? The answer is no. There is nothing there, so you could put -0 if you want. And of course, put that -2 out here in the front, the square, put the 3 at the very end. The 3 is the k value. Okay, so we all need to know how to do this. This was on the homework when we graphed. This will be on the final exam as well. So the vertex is 0, 3. And we should all know that because the a value is -2 right there in the front, we know it's going to be opening down and it's going to be a little narrower than usual. So let's go to the coordinate 0, 3. 0 on the x, 3 on the y. Put a dot there. Axis of symmetry is the vertical line going right through that x value of the vertex. We need more coordinates. We usually think of the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. However, the a value of -2 means I need to modify this pattern by that factor of -2. Now the negative, I'm just going to not worry about the negative because I know that this parabola opens down. So I'm really just going to worry about the 2. So I'm going to say 1 times 2, that's going to give me 2. 4 times 2, that's going to give me 8. 9 times 2 is going to give me 18. So my new pattern, instead of 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9, is 1, 2, 2, 8, 3, 18. So you modify the original pattern that we memorized by that new a value that we have. So from the vertex, I'm going to go 1 over 2 down. 1 over 2 down, and you're going to end up with the dot right here. Then I'm going to go back to the vertex and go 2 over 8 down. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, way down here. And then I'm simply going to map them over to the other side of the axis of symmetry. I'm going to graph my parabola. And we're good. And now for the range. The range are the y values. So what do we say the range is? Y is less than or equal to what? y is less than or equal to 3. That's the range value. Perfect. For the last one, number 16, write the equation of the axis of symmetry. First of all, we need to know what the heck this is. We know visually that's the vertical line crossing the vertex, right? And we know that vertical lines have to be written as an equation x equals, and we should know that the axis of symmetry is simply the x value of the vertex. So you're going to say x equals the x value of your vertex. Now, is this equation in vertex form? Or you could just look at your vertex? No, it's standard form, right? So we're forced to, you can't even look at it in vertex form. It's not like you could put parentheses around the x because there's two separate x's. So you can't do that. So you have to actually go back to the old way of finding the vertex using x equals negative b over 2 times a. Okay? And then, of course, use parentheses to replace the letters. Identify your a value, your b value, and your c value, and plug in your b value of 8 right there and your a value of 6 right there. Keep in mind, this is only the x value of the vertex. And also keep in mind, we're not trying to find the vertex. We're trying to find the axis of symmetry equation, which is x equals the x value of the vertex. So if you wrote x equals negative 8 over 12, technically that's the correct answer for the axis of symmetry equation. Of course, the better answer would be reducing by 4, and it would be negative 2/3. And of course, you need x equals right in front of it, because that's the only way you're going to produce a vertical line. Ladies and gentlemen, I've gone over this entire quiz, explaining it in detail, step by step, in about 22 minutes. You guys have a whole class period, and you don't have to explain it to anybody. You guys should be able to retake this and get a really good score on tomorrow's quiz. Now, just keep in mind, there's going to be 2 additional questions right here on the discriminant. And I think I want to do 1 or 2 extra questions, maybe just on vertex, like find the vertex. Okay? That way it'll be a total of 20 questions instead of 16. Tomorrow. Retake is tomorrow. Good luck.